Hey everyone, in this video we're walking through every question in Module 2 of Practice Test number 10. That's 26 questions. For each one, I'll read the passage, show the question, pause so you can think, then walk through every wrong answer, and finish with the correct one. Question 1 of 26. We're opening on a hard one. Stay focused. This passage is titled Mira Engström Composing. The passage describes poet Mira Engström, who writes by hand, and explains that typing makes revision feel a certain way, because every change appears clean, with no record of the prior choice it replaced. We need the word that captures that absence of trace. The choices are weightless, permanent, slow, and communal. The colon after the blank tells us what the word must mean, changes that leave no record of what came before. The right answer has to capture that lack of trace or substance, not speed, durability, or social setting. B, permanent, reverses the meaning. The complaint is that type changes leave no trace, not that they fix things forever. C, slow, has no support. The passage never mentions speed or delay, only the disappearance of prior choices. D, communal, is irrelevant because Engström composes alone by hand, and no community of writers or readers is involved in the revision process described. Choice A, weightless, fits precisely. When edits leave behind no record of the choice they displaced, revision carries no weight, no history, no friction, nothing tying the writer to prior decisions. Weightless names exactly that quality of frictionless, traceless change. Question 2 of 26. A medium after that. This passage is titled Snow Goose Migration. The sentence describes Sarah Putuguk's findings about snow goose migration, noting that warming summers changed not only the timing of the geese's return, also the routes they took. The question asks which choice completes the text following standard English conventions. Each option offers a different connector to pair with not only and link it to also. The key is recognizing the correlative conjunction structure already set up by the phrase not only earlier in the sentence. Choice B fails because not only and also is not a recognized correlative pairing in standard English. Choice C is wrong since not only for also is not idiomatic and creates a nonsensical link between the two changes. Choice D is incorrect because or implies a choice between alternatives, which contradicts the additive logic established by not only, where both items must be true. Choice A is correct because English requires the fixed correlative pairing not only X, but also Y. Inserting but produces the standard idiomatic construction and properly signals that the roots are an additional change alongside the timing. Question 3 of 26. One more medium. This passage is titled Nigerian Rare Earths. The sentence describes geologist Adaeze Nwosu identifying 3 rare earth deposits in central Nigeria, with the largest near Jos. The question asks which punctuation choice keeps the sentence consistent with standard English conventions. The choices offer a semicolon, a comma, a bare and a bare but. The key is recognizing that the material on each side of the blank is a complete independent clause, so the punctuation has to join 2 full sentences correctly. Choice B places a comma between 2 independent clauses, which produces a comma splice. Choice C inserts and but without the comma in front, so the conjunction alone fails to fix the splice. Standard usage demands and. Choice D fails for the same reason, but without a preceding comma cannot legally join 2 independent clauses. Choice A, the semicolon, is the right pick. Nwosu has identified 3 rare earth deposits in central Nigeria, and the largest is located near the city of Jos, are both independent clauses, and a semicolon is exactly the mark used to join 2 independent clauses without a coordinating conjunction. Question 4 of 26. Now it gets harder. This passage is titled Sofia Vargas's Show. The sentence describes Sofia Vargas's first solo show and inserts the descriptive phrase, a series of small, almost monochrome canvases between the show and the critic's reaction. We need the punctuation mark that appears in both blanks to satisfy standard English conventions. The phrase between the blanks is a parenthetical appositive that renames the show, so it must be set off by a matching pair of marks. Whatever punctuation goes in the first blank must work as a partner with the same mark in the second blank. Choice B is tempting because paired commas can frame appositives, but the phrase itself already contains a comma, which blurs the boundaries. Dashes resolve that ambiguity. Choice C fails because a single colon cannot pair with another mark to bracket a mid-sentence appositive. Choice D fails because semicolons cannot pair to set off an appositive. They join independent clauses or separate items in a complex list. Choice A uses em dashes on both sides. Em dashes work in pairs to bracket an appositive, and they handle the internal comma inside small, almost monochrome, cleanly without creating ambiguity about where the inserted phrase ends. Question 5 of 26. Back to an easier one. This passage is titled Mistaken Point Fossils. The passage describes fossils at Mistaken Point in Newfoundland that represent some of the oldest known complex organisms, followed by a clause specifying when they appeared and that they vanished without descendants. The question asks which punctuation choice fits the conventions of Standard English at the blank between these two independent clauses. The choices offer 4 ways to join the clauses: a colon, a comma, the conjunction and with no comma, and the transition word however with no surrounding punctuation. Because both halves of the sentence are independent clauses, the punctuation must legitimately link 2 complete thoughts. Choice B places only a comma between 2 independent clauses, producing a comma splice. Choice C uses and without the required comma before it, creating a run-on. Even with a comma, simple addition would understate the elaborative relationship. Choice D inserts however without a preceding semicolon or following comma, so it fails to fix the splice and misrepresents the logical link, which is elaboration, not contrast. Choice A is correct. A colon properly joins 2 independent clauses when the second one elaborates on or explains the first. Here, the material after the blank specifies when the organisms appeared and notes their lack of descendants, directly expanding on the claim that they are among the oldest known complex organisms. Question 6 of 26. One more easy. This passage is titled Weinberg Symphonies. The sentence tells us that Polish composer Mieczysław Weinberg wrote 26 symphonies, and that many remained unperformed for decades after his death. The question asks which choice joins these 2 ideas while conforming to Standard English conventions. Each option offers a different way to connect the 2 halves: a comma plus a coordinator, a bare coordinator, or a semicolon plus a coordinator. We need a punctuation plus conjunction combo that correctly links 2 independent clauses and reflects the relationship between them. B uses and, which is merely additive and misses the contrast between writing many symphonies and having them go unperformed. C drops the comma before but, creating a run-on by leaving 2 independent clauses without proper punctuation. D pairs a semicolon with but semicolons and coordinating conjunctions don't combine this way in Standard English. Choice A, a comma followed by but, is correct. Both halves are independent clauses, and the standard way to join them is with a comma plus a coordinating conjunction. But also captures the contrast. He produced a huge body of work, yet much of it went unheard. Question 7 of 26. Stepping up to a medium. This passage is titled Addis Ababa Taxi Study. The question asks which punctuation choice completes the sentence about sociologist Bekele Tadesse and his decade of taxi driver interviews in a way that follows Standard English conventions. We have 2 complete thoughts, one about Tadesse spending 10 years interviewing drivers, and another about his next book drawing on those interviews. Each could stand alone as its own sentence, so the punctuation must legally join 2 independent clauses. Choice B places only a comma between 2 independent clauses, producing a classic comma splice. Choice C uses a colon, which would signal that the second clause defines or elaborates the first, but the book detail is a related but separate fact, not an explanation. Choice D drops in however with no punctuation around it, creating a run-on, and the contrast however implies isn't supported by the content. Choice A, the semicolon, is exactly the mark English uses to join 2 related independent clauses without a coordinating conjunction. Both halves here are full sentences with clear subjects and verbs, and they sit in a tight thematic relationship, which is the semicolon's specialty. Question 8 of 26. Another medium. This passage is titled Library Renovation. The sentence describes a medical college library along with its 3 storage annexes being closed for renovation until next spring. The question asks which verb form conforms to the conventions of standard English. The choices vary in both number and tense. Is singular present, are is plural present, were is plural past, and have been is plural present perfect. The key is identifying the true subject and ignoring the modifying phrase set off by commas. BR uses a plural verb, but library is singular. The annexes phrase doesn't change that. C were is both plural and past tense, conflicting with the singular subject and the present time renovation. D have been is also a plural form, and the prepositional phrase cannot pluralize the subject, so it fails the same agreement test. Choice A matches the singular subject, the library. The phrase, along with its 3 storage annexes, is a prepositional modifier tucked between commas. It does not join the subject the way and would. Since the subject remains singular and the action is current, the singular present is correct. Question 9 of 26. Now it gets harder. This passage is titled Chess Tournament. The sentence describes a chess tournament's second round and uses an inverted structure. The fronted prepositional phrase among the contestants comes before the verb, with the true subject following it. We need the verb form that follows standard English conventions. The choices vary by number, singular was versus plural were, are, have been, and by tense, past versus present and present perfect. To pick correctly, we must identify the real subject and the tense set by the surrounding clause. B, were, is plural and clashes with the singular subject, a 14-year-old. C, are, is plural and also shifts into the present, which conflicts with the past tense context established by had defeated and the previous day. D, have been, is plural and present perfect, failing on both number and tense for the same reasons. Choice A, was, is correct. The grammatical subject is a 14-year-old from Yerevan, which is singular and simply inverted to follow the verb. The phrase among the contestants is a modifier and does not control number. Because the relative clause uses had defeated and references the previous day, the past tense singular was fits both number and time frame. Question 10 of 26. A medium after that. This passage is titled Mathematics Publication. The sentence describes Hwa-young Choi and her postdoctoral collaborator publishing a proof, and we need the word that fits standard English conventions in the blank before debate over its central lemma. The 4 options are homophones or near homophones: their, and his. Only one of these is a possessive pronoun that can plausibly modify the noun debate and refer back to the 2 mathematicians. B, there, is an adverb or expletive indicating place or existence, never a possessive, so it cannot modify debate. C, there, is the contraction of they are, a subject plus verb, which leaves the sentence ungrammatical before a noun. D, his, is singular and gendered, so it cannot refer to 2 collaborators, one of whom is a woman. Choice A, there, is correct because the blank requires a plural possessive pronoun to show that the debate belongs to the pair Choi and her collaborator. There is precisely that possessive form, and it sits naturally before the noun debate. Question 11 of 26. One more medium. This passage is titled Documentary Crew. The sentence describes a river that had been rising for 3 days by the time a documentary crew arrived, flooding the lower fields. The blank needs a verb form that fits standard English conventions for this past time narrative. The 4 options test different tenses: past perfect progressive, simple past, and simple present. The key signal is the phrase by the time the crew arrived, paired with a duration of 3 days, which sets up a continuous action completed before a specific past moment. B, was rising, uses past progressive, which only shows an action ongoing at some past moment without conveying that it preceded the crew's arrival across 3 days. C, rose, is simple past and loses the continuous over 3 days reading the sentence requires. D, rises, is simple present and clashes with the clearly past time narrative established by arrived. Choice A, had been rising, is correct because past perfect progressive captures an ongoing action that began earlier and continued up to a later past reference point. The rising spans 3 days and culminates at the crew's arrival, exactly what this tense is built to express. Question 12 of 26. Now it gets harder. This passage is titled Composer Recording. The sentence describes a violinist and 2 singers who would only record a piece after hearing the composer perform it. The question asks which verb form completes the sentence according to standard English conventions. The choices offer 4 verb forms: were, was, is, and has been. 2 are singular present or perfect forms. 1 is singular past and 1 is plural past. The key grammar point is subject-verb agreement inside a neither-nor construction. Choice B, was, is singular and clashes with the nearer plural subject, 2 singers. Choice C, is also singular and introduces a tense mismatch with the past-leaning context. Choice D, has been, is singular present perfect, so it fails on both number agreement and tense alignment with the rest of the sentence. With neither X nor Y, the verb agrees with the nearer subject. Here, the nearer subject is the 2 singers, which is plural, so the verb must be plural. The past tense plural form were in choice A satisfies both number agreement and the sentence's past-leaning context. Question 13 of 26. A medium after that. This passage is titled Symposium Panel. The sentence describes 17 panelists who have turned in written remarks ahead of an upcoming symposium, and the task is to pick the verb form that follows standard English conventions. The 4 options vary in number and tense: a singular present perfect helper, a plural present perfect helper, a past perfect form, and a plural present passive. We need to identify the true subject and the correct time frame. B, have, treats the subject as plural, but each governs agreement and demands a singular verb. C, had, shifts to past perfect, which would require a past reference point. The sentence anchors to a future event before the symposium begins, so present perfect is needed. D, are, creates a passive construction that loses the perfective sense of action completed before the symposium and also mismatches the singular subject. Choice A, has, is correct. The grammatical subject is each, which is always singular, even when followed by a prepositional phrase containing a plural noun like of the 17 panelists. Pairing singular each with has submitted gives the proper present perfect form for action completed before the future event. Question 14 of 26. Here's an easier one. This passage is titled Inventor's Patent. The sentence describes a young inventor and a patent application that has been rejected 3 times, then mentions the decision to redesign the device. The question asks which choice completes the text according to standard English conventions, so we need the right word to link the inventor to the patent application. The blank sits between inventor and patent application, signaling that we need a relative pronoun showing possession. The application belongs to the inventor. The choices offer a possessive relative, a contraction, an invented form, and a basic relative pronoun. Be whose is a contraction of who is or who has, not a possessive, so plugging it in produces who is patent application, which is nonsense. C, whiches, is not an accepted standard English form at all. D, that, is a relative pronoun but carries no possessive meaning, so it fails to show the application belongs to the inventor. Choice A, whose, is the possessive relative pronoun in English. It correctly indicates that the patent application belongs to the inventor and smoothly introduces the descriptive clause modifying inventor. Question 15 of 26. Keeping it straightforward, this passage is titled Vaccine Effects. The passage notes that the vaccine prevents the most severe cases of the disease, then states that it does not stop transmission and that masks remain recommended indoors. The question asks which transition most logically connects these 2 ideas. We have 4 transition words to weigh: a contrast marker, a cause and effect marker, an exemplification marker, and a comparison marker. The right choice has to match the actual logical relationship between a positive claim about the vaccine and a qualifying limitation. B, therefore, wrongly frames the second sentence as a consequence of the first, but not stopping transmission isn't caused by preventing severe cases. C, for example, fails because a limitation on transmission isn't an instance of preventing severe illness. D, similarly, suggests the two clauses report parallel effects, yet they describe opposing outcomes, not matching ones. Choice A, however, is correct. The first sentence highlights a benefit, preventing severe cases, while the second introduces a limitation, failing to stop transmission. That pivot from upside to downside is a contrast, and however, is the transition that signals exactly that shift. Question 16 of 26. Another easy one. This passage is titled Bogotá Bus System. The passage describes how urban planners in Bogotá redesigned the bus system around dedicated lanes during the 1990s, and then notes that ridership grew by more than 300%. The question asks which transition most logically connects these two ideas. We have 4 transition options: a cause and effect signal, a contrast marker, an additive transition, and a similarity transition. The relationship between the redesign and the ridership surge will determine which logic fits. B, nevertheless, signals contrast, but the ridership increase confirms rather than contradicts the redesign's success, so no opposition exists. C, in addition, simply tacks on another fact and fails to convey that the redesign caused the growth. D, likewise, marks similarity between parallel items, yet the two clauses are not comparable facts. One is an action, and the other is its outcome. Choice A, as a result, captures a clear cause and effect link. The redesign of dedicated bus lanes produced the dramatic jump in ridership. The second sentence reports the consequence of the planner's action described in the first, so a causal transition is exactly what the logic demands. Question 17 of 26. Stepping up to a medium. This passage is titled Solar Subsidies. The passage presents two effects of government solar panel subsidies: lowered consumer prices on one side and harder competition for small panel makers on the other. The question asks which transition most logically connects these two ideas. The choices offer 4 different logical relationships: contrast with on the other hand, cause-effect with therefore, specification with in particular, and exemplification with for instance. We need the one that signals the second sentence introduces a competing or opposing effect, not a consequence, refinement, or example. B fails because therefore would make the second sentence a consequence of the first, but harming small makers is not caused by lower prices. It's a parallel, opposing effect. C fails because in particular introduces a refinement or specific case of the prior claim, and hurting small competitors is not a subpoint of lowering prices. D fails because the second sentence is not an example of the first, it's a separate effect, pointing the other direction. Choice A, on the other hand, fits because the first sentence highlights a benefit of subsidies, lower prices, while the second flags a drawback, squeezing out small makers. That pivot from positive to negative effect is exactly what on the other hand signals, a competing perspective on the same policy. Question 18 of 26, still in medium territory. This passage is titled Carbon Capture. The passage contrasts traditional carbon capture research, which targets emissions at coal plant smokestacks, with Bruno Lemos's recent prototypes that pull CO2 directly from open ambient air. The question asks which transition most logically links these two sentences. The choices offer 4 logical relationships: contrast, consequence, conclusion, and specification. We need to identify how the second sentence relates to the first, whether it opposes it, follows from it, wraps it up, or narrows it down. B, consequently, fails because the new prototypes are an alternative methodology, not a result caused by smokestack filtering. C, in conclusion, would signal the close of an argument, but the passage is introducing a new development, not summarizing one. D, specifically, would require the second sentence to elaborate or narrow down the first, yet ambient air capture is a different technique, not a specification of smokestack filtering. Choice A, by contrast, fits perfectly. The first sentence describes the long-standing focus on smokestack filtering, while the second introduces a fundamentally different approach: capturing CO2 from ambient air at non-industrial sites. That opposition between old method and new method is exactly what by contrast signals. Question 19 of 26. Here's an easier one. This passage is titled Honey Eater Diet. The passage describes the Australian honey eater, noting that its primary food is nectar, but that it also eats insects during breeding season when nestlings need extra protein. The question asks which transition word best connects these two ideas. The four options signal different logical relationships: contrast, cause and effect, similarity, and restatement. We need to identify how the second sentence relates to the first. Is it an exception, a consequence, a parallel, or a rephrasing? B, therefore, implies that eating insects results from feeding on nectar, but no causal link exists between the two diets. C, similarly, suggests the diets are alike, yet nectar and insects are being contrasted, not compared. D, in other words, would require the second sentence to restate the first, but it introduces new seasonal behavior rather than rephrasing the original claim. Choice A, however, is correct. The first sentence establishes nectar as the primary diet, and the second introduces an exception, insects during breeding season. That shift from a general rule to a contrasting case is precisely what however signals. Question 20 of 26. And now a hard one. This passage is titled Augusta Savage Sculptures. The passage explains that few of Augusta Savage's early sculptures survived because she worked in unfired clay, yet contemporary studio photographs let scholars reconstruct much of her work. The question asks which transition most logically links these two ideas. The choices offer four logical relationships: concession with even so, cause and effect with as a result, exemplification with for instance, and addition with in addition. We need the one that fits the shift between a setback and an unexpected workaround. B, as a result, fails because the photographic reconstruction isn't caused by the loss. It succeeds in spite of it. C, for instance, wrongly frames the studio photographs as an example of lost sculptures, but they're a separate resource that survives. D, in addition, would pile on another point about loss, yet the second sentence pushes against the loss rather than extending it. Choice A, even so, is correct. The first sentence establishes a loss. Most sculptures didn't survive. The second sentence delivers a counter-expectation. Scholars can still reconstruct her body of work through photographs. Even so precisely signals that contrast between expected limitation and actual outcome. Question 21 of 26, a medium after that. This passage is titled Helsinki Traffic Pilot. The passage contrasts how most cities track traffic congestion, sensors embedded in major roads, with a new Helsinki pilot that pulls data from anonymized GPS pings on city-issued bicycles. The question asks which transition most logically connects these two sentences. The choices offer four different logical relationships: contrast, cause and effect, exemplification, and similarity. We need to identify which one fits the relationship between standard sensor-based measurement and Helsinki's bicycle GPS approach. Choice B, therefore, wrongly implies that Helsinki's bicycle pilot results from standard sensor use, but no causal link exists between the two. Choice C, for example, is illogical because a bicycle-based GPS system is not an instance of embedded sensor measurement. It is a different technique entirely. Choice D, likewise, suggests the two approaches are similar, but the passage emphasizes their different data source, so similarity contradicts the content. Choice A, by contrast, is correct. The first sentence describes the typical method, embedded road sensors, while the second introduces a clearly different method, GPS pings from bicycles. By contrast signals exactly that opposition between the standard practice and Helsinki's alternative. Question 22 of 26. Still in medium territory. This passage is titled Hilma af Klint Notes. The notes describe Hilma af Klint as a prolific painter whose abstract works predated Kandinsky's, and the student wants to emphasize her role as an early abstract painter. The question asks which choice most effectively uses the notes to accomplish that specific goal. Because the goal is precedence in abstraction, the winning choice must highlight the timing of her abstract work relative to other abstract painters. Choices that focus on output volume, concealment, or late exhibition may be factually accurate, but they do not speak to her status as an early pioneer of the form. Choice B cites her total output and her will's concealment instruction, neither of which addresses precedence in abstraction. Choice C notes that her largest works were not exhibited until 1986, but late public exhibition is unrelated to whether she painted abstractly early. Choice D focuses on her will's 20-year hiding instruction, which speaks to delay after her death rather than to her early role in abstract art. Choice A directly states that Af Klint produced abstract paintings several years before Kandinsky's first abstract works. That comparative claim establishes her precedence, which is exactly the meaning of early abstract painter, satisfying the rhetorical goal. Question 23 of 26. One more medium. This passage is titled Octopus Cognition Notes. The notes describe octopus cognition, including neuron counts, semi-independent arms, puzzle solving, and long-term memory. The student wants to emphasize how octopus cognition is distributed across the body, and the question asks which choice uses the notes to accomplish that goal. Because the goal is specifically about distribution, the winning choice must point to where cognition physically lives in the body, not just how smart octopuses are overall. We need details that tie thinking to multiple locations rather than a single brain. Choice B describes puzzle solving on par with primates, which speaks to cognitive level but says nothing about where that cognition is located. Choice C highlights long-term memory of human handlers, which demonstrates sophistication rather than physical distribution. Choice D pairs total neuron count with memory and puzzle solving, but both are global traits that fail to establish that cognition is spread across the body. Choice A combines two notes that directly establish distribution. 2/3 of the neurons sit in the arms, and each arm can process local information without central coordination. Together, these facts show cognition spread throughout the body rather than centralized. Question 24 of 26. Here's an easier one. This passage is titled Sargassum Belt Notes. The notes describe the Great Atlantic Sargassum Belt, a massive seaweed formation that has caused various problems since 2011. The student's stated goal is to emphasize the economic impact on affected communities, so the right answer must foreground money lost or spent because of the belt. Each choice pulls a different fact from the notes: cleanup costs, geographic range, health hazards from hydrogen sulfide, and the year the belt first appeared. Only one of these speaks directly to dollars and economies. Choice B describes where the belt stretches and when it became continuous, which is geographic and historical, not economic. Choice C focuses on a health hazard from hydrogen sulfide. Harm to human health is a separate category from financial loss. Choice D notes when the belt first appeared as a continuous feature, a chronological detail that says nothing about cost or community finances. Choice A states that cleaning up sargassum on Caribbean beaches costs coastal economies hundreds of millions of dollars each year. That figure is explicitly economic and ties the cost to the affected communities, which is exactly what the goal demands. Question 25 of 26. Stepping up to a medium. This passage is titled Lucia Berlin Notes. The task involves student notes about writer Lucia Berlin, and the goal is to emphasize that her literary reputation grew significantly after her death. We need the choice that best uses the notes to show that specific arc of growth. To accomplish the goal, the answer must contrast Berlin's modest standing before 2004 with the bestseller status and critical praise that came afterward. A choice that omits the before and after contrast, or that buries Berlin among other writers, will not emphasize her personal trajectory. Choice B cites her output and the critical comparisons, but never mentions the limited pre-death readership, so it fails to establish change over time. Choice C only points out the gap between her 2004 death and the 2015 publication, noting chronology without indicating any rise in reputation. Choice D frames the collection as merely one of several recent bestsellers, which dilutes Berlin's specific story rather than emphasizing her individual posthumous ascent. Choice A directly pairs the small pre-death readership with the 2015 bestseller and the new critical comparisons to Carver and Paley. That juxtaposition is exactly what conveys reputational growth after her death, fulfilling the rhetorical goal. Question 26 of 26. Final question, and it's a hard one. This passage is titled Alice Ball Notes. The notes describe chemist Alice Ball, who created a water-soluble injectable form of Shalmugra oil that improved leprosy treatment before her early death in 1916. The student wants to emphasize the medical significance of Ball's work, and we must pick the choice that best accomplishes that goal. Each option pulls from a different bullet in the notes. One highlights the treatment Ball developed, one centers on credit and recognition, one focuses on her death and unpublished method, and one describes only the prior state of leprosy care. Choice B emphasizes credit and posthumous recognition, which speaks to her legacy rather than the medicine itself. Choice C reports her death at 24 and that she never published the method, saying nothing about the treatment's medical value. Choice D describes only the pre-Ball state of leprosy care, leaving out what Ball actually contributed and therefore failing to convey medical significance. Choice A directly names Ball's medical contribution, a water-soluble form of Shalmugra oil that could be injected without the side effects of the existing treatment. That sentence captures the actual therapeutic advance, which is exactly what medical significance requires. That's all 26 questions for Module 2. Pause the video and count up how many you got right. If you found this helpful, like and subscribe. I post full walkthroughs like this for every practice test. Good luck on test day. You've got this.